Hello everyone, Darth Vader here, to be looking at how more article for Story 25. Yes, we had a networking meeting tonight as well. So starting the day
with Heidi, who's going to announce the keynotes now. Thank you.
Everyone. It's so lovely to see so many of you. So I'm very excited to introduce the first keynote speakers of this weekend. We have two amazing people. First of all, Lizzie Zipser. Lizzie has been an animal activist since 2001. Since then, she has specialized in the use of cognitive neuroscience to drive action for advocacy, fundraising, and policy change across all issue areas. She now runs Blue States Global Team, an agency which has now raised over £3 billion and mobilized over 140 million people to take action. Lizzie is a mentor as part of Provent's Kickstarter for Good Incubator and has been a coach, mentor, and advisor to many organizations including Animal Think Tank, World Animal Protection, 4Paws, and Animal Charity Evaluators.
You can be a hero. And some people say a witness, but a witness can actually be a witness perpetrator if they don't help, or a witness victim if they're, traumatized by the violence. And so we start to develop this mindset where we lose the capacity for nuance, and we place everyone, including ourselves, into one of these roles with rigid boundaries between them. And this way of thinking leads to a sort of a toxic moral perfectionism, where we start to think that if we're not good, 100% good 100% of the time, we're no longer heroes, and we're not victims, we're not hanging in slaughterhouses, for example, then we're perpetrators. And
I'm going to wrap up with asking you, Melanie, what gives you hope? And then we're going to throw it to Q&A.
Yeah, thank you so much. So many things give me hope, but I'm going to keep this quick and share what gives me the most hope of anything, which is you. Just coming to conferences like this and seeing and going around the world and just seeing the incredible work that's being done and the incredible level of commitment of the people in this movement is so deeply inspiring to me, and it recharges my batteries like pretty much nothing else. And it's so important to remember that we are all pioneers. This movement is young. It is still a young movement, and it takes...
So I think it's busier than last year. I hate it. Anyway, don't film the part where they said about investing. Government is investing, I think it was 100 million. Transition to published art, so good to know.
Something better. We are working on school food reform. We are campaigning to change the UK's food policy, specifically around the outdated wording that encourages schools to serve meat and dairy 3 to 5 times a week. And this, we think that this policy doesn't reflect the modern nutrition science, specifically around outdated, specifically around sustainability goals or choice, or the choices that many families want to make.
Is the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs in the top left-hand corner. You might know them as DEFRA. So this is the department most obviously that we want to engage because they are responsible for all of our food and farming policy, and they are also responsible for lots of the policies that affect wildlife and nature. So they are the people that we want to be our best friends, basically, within government. But there are also lots of other departments that we want to engage too, and this is because the kind of ways that we use and have animals have an impact on almost all parts of our life. Animals, they're affected in what we eat and the pets that we have and the way that we have an impact on the natural world. And so it makes sense that different departments, most different departments, are making policy that has an impact on animals to a greater or lesser extent. If I'm leaving you with anything today, it's probably the next point. So our goal, really, when we are engaging civil servants, is that we are trying to establish a mutually beneficial relationship that is built on trust. So we want to get into a position where the policy team that we're engaging has learned to trust us, and we trust them in return.
Rebellion came along, and all of our volunteers left and joined Extinction Rebellion because Extinction Rebellion was way cooler and doing something more important than we were doing. So then I joined this, and I got even more obsessed with mobilising because I saw, wow, about 1,000, people always say 10,000 people, and yes, there were 10,000 people knocking around, but there's 1,000 people actually doing stuff, right? And it changed the world, right? And suddenly there was a global movement was sparked within 2 weeks, right? And it was 1,000 people. And they got a net zero by 2050 target, the government declared a climate emergency, and they got a citizens' assembly, if anyone saw People versus the Climate. Didn't get enacted into law, but that's a big win. It took 2 weeks and 1,000 people. So, are vegans weak, or are we strong?
Strong!
Yes, exactly. Depends what we do though, because it might just end there. So I became vegan, and that's just a natural part of what they're doing. And that's so important, and for all these movements. But yeah, go to churches and watch them do it, and you will learn like far more than I can say in half an hour. And I wish I had 2 hours, and then I would go into way more detail about the different churches. Okay, yeah. So, and the final thing is, so I'm here to talk about plant-based schools. Oh, sorry, no, one more thing before that. So the first thing is getting people in. So get people in like this, right? Get people into the churches. But then we also need, and this is something else we don't want to do. It's difficult. It causes problems. It's chaotic. It means that you will lose your position eventually, or you might, not lose the status you have in the organisation. You allow people to become leaders.
Honestly, I would have probably, I don't know, flogged me having lunch or something. Then also wanted to get some language study done, but no, there's a big queue to get in. So, all those people even just like crowding around while I was trying to stuff myself for lunch. And I most likely had too much coffee. But yeah, the nail in the coffin really. It's just it's fast off. Just water. Decided to call me sir 3 times, even though each time I was like, please don't. And on the 3rd time I snapped, naturally. So, yes, I brought it up. But I'm alright now.
Is in certain cases government, right? I know lots of European NGOs in countries like Denmark and Poland have gotten big money from governments for various grants. I will say to you, I don't know a lot of big funders, that first category of the 4. I don't know a lot of big funders that support sanctuaries. And I know that that's not what you want to hear from me, but I don't know a lot of it.
Thing that I can think of certainly. We have such a huge bar to entry to the general public. Like if we look at anti-racist campaigning, the basic ask to be involved in anti-racism campaigning is don't be a dickhead. That's it. Like just don't be a dickhead and you can come and join us on a protest, right? If you want to fight for the rights of gay people or women or any other repressed and oppressed minority or majority in some cases, then mostly the call to action is just don't be a dickhead and join us on a protest. For us, if our focus is as a vegan movement, which in many cases it is, and perhaps in many cases it should be, what our bar to entry suddenly becomes isn't don't be a dickhead. It's like, yeah, don't be a dickhead, but also change your clothes, change your food, change your entertainment. You might have to quit your job. By the way, everyone at every social event you go to, every family event is going to hate you.
Just spent an hour in the wellbeing room. Previous none of the talks were particularly interesting, and I thought could do with a fully charged phone and some French. There's French in there. How you sound on. I did take a first, but if I did do the listening tabs.
Idea that we wanted to work and help vegans, and we thought, well, if we couldn't do that one-to-one because they don't have the money for consultancy, can we do it collectively? And that's where Vegan Business Tribe came from as well. And as I said, after 5 years we took that through the ProVeg incubator. Then I got involved with ProVeg, and I got more involved with the animal rights side and the not-for-profit side. So at the moment I straddle both those camps. Because we've got quite a small group here, we can go a little bit interactive. So I had this slide prepared just in case. So I'd love to just know, what is your view on the relationship between business and animal advocacy, just as a sector and as a movement as well? So these two companies here, Tesco.
Interpretation of other provisions in a situation of conflict, and because of the norm hierarchy, when they are on the constitutional level, then of course where also human rights and freedoms are written, they challenge the rights and freedoms of humans. They, as fundamental rights, they limit other fundamental rights. They may repeal acts that conflict with the fundamental rights, and they incentive to act on behalf of animals, both the legislature, government, and individual persons, humans.
I'm not going to be on the side of the CEO who's trying to send someone to prison for taking a sick chicken to the vet. I'm going to be side of the guy who's trying to take an animal to the vet.
Got another 12 minutes of questions. Please keep asking and voting via the app. This is from Frankie, I think at the back. Raise your hand, Frankie. What should we do? Can I show up at a factory farm next week and rescue? What are the next steps?
Yes. So it's interesting. This hasn't been an evolution for me, and I'm always evolving. Honestly, like the Animal Rising folks, Ben and Dan, and Rose have all really pushed me on this. I think that action bias is super important, and you can get a little too caught up in trying to create all these preparations instead of just saying, like, I don't know how much I'm allowed to share about specific projects. I won't mention specific projects, but I know there are some open rescues that have been pretty legendary in Animal Rising's history, where they literally just planned in 24 hours. They're just like, let's just go farm and do this. Let's just go do this. Like, we have the right to do this. This place is torturing beagles. Why are we accepting the fact that we're not allowed to do this?
Tables at the top as well, in the fourth floor balcony, but we'll help you with that. At 8:30, we've got Art of Compassion project gallery opening, so that will be on the fourth floor, and we'll be opening a new area that wasn't open today called the Gallery Bar. This is a really great space for networking and for having a look at the art that's available, and there'll be a silent auction. Everything that's displayed will be available for sale. All proceeds will go.
Right now, it's supposed to be a networking session. However, I don't feel like my net is working. I'm just here by myself. Okay, so I haven't even seen what this fruit thing. I was on a panel. Is it track fruit? Very nice. This is very late dinner, but I'm gonna make this way.
Welcome to the show, let everybody know. Under playing the game, a breakdown of the chain. You better buckle up, I'm for another cup. This is Bubba Wings, so drink it up, my friend. pocket, wasn't enough. Fuck you and fuck her too. So I was patient, still be with her. That's okay, that's so shit. No one was playing in my chest. I wish you the best. And fuck you. I hope you understand. Thinking about this all day long. Never felt a feeling quite strong. I can't believe how much you turn. Just cry, let it know that you're done, because I want it all. Only a kiss, I let Rihanna like this. Only a kiss, it was only a kiss. We're having a sick, and she's calling me back. And I heard this smoke, and she's making it back. And I was going to bed, and my son made me sick. And it's all in my head, and she's touching inside now. He takes off her dress now. Baby, go. Angels instead. And my face walks out on Grace Street.
Morning.
Because we leave it to personal choice. And if we think about fundamental human interests, we don't leave those to personal choice, right? If we think someone's property ought to be respected or their person ought to be respected, we don't leave it to people just being nice and hope for the best, right? We introduce a set of laws and we back those with a coercive power to compel people to adhere to them. And then that's one of the things that we need for non-human animals. The other reason that non-human animals are interested or respected is because they can't speak for themselves. They're particularly vulnerable, unable to represent themselves in political arenas where really important decisions about those interests are taken. And so we have this result where animal interests are just not respected. Political decision makers don't properly account for them. Individuals decide, oh, it's not for me, I don't have to. And so they live their lives in these spaces away from the public gaze.
In their own work, but they don't have the expertise. So what we have been doing is that we do it easy for them. So we have everything ready, the proposal or suggestion ready for them, written so they can use it. So I think whatever you think is best in the UK and in the legal system here, just make a proposal or write it down and have concrete examples of how it could be achieved.
Of the animal agriculture system, essentially high environmental costs and relatively low outputs. And reducing livestock farming is a really fantastic way that we can alleviate some of the impacts on the climate. And some studies suggest that actually globally, if everybody were to transition to a plant-based diet, we could actually free up land equivalent to the size of North America and Brazil combined. Just because raising animals for food is so much less efficient than eating those plants directly. Land is for, essentially sort of grouping all of the land that's for, say, beef and lamb pastures, or all of the land that's for dairy pastures, so you can really see the total land from these different uses.
So it seemed more achievable to go for the slave trade first. There's also quite a horrific part of slavery in an industry full of horrors, so it's easy to get emotional buy-in from the British public in terms of the public opinion against it. And lastly, they thought it would lead to the abolition of slavery entirely. So if you cut off the supply of slaves to the slave colonies, due to the horrific treatment of the slaves and the lack of supply, this would naturally lead to the deterioration of the population, and it would just wither on the vine, is how they put it. So they were really focused on abolishing the slave trade, and although they did a few other sort of initiatives at the time, there was this remarkable focus and dedication on a singular goal, which is an alignment on making sure this happened. So quite incredible. With Navy, you need a lot of people, and so to get a lot of people, they would send the Navy would send gangs of sailors, mainly around the coast, and they would either forcibly just kidnap you off the street, and you're in the Navy. Or they would buy you a drink, they would put a shilling in your drink, and you would drink it with them, or pally. And then you've taken the king's shilling because you drunk the drink, and then they can kidnap you and take you through.
Audience online. Allow us to demonstrate with a short video. And this, a non-vegan, Kai, is scrolling the internet and he sees an advert for 3minutes.wtf. He clicks on the website and he watches the movie. It's a 3-minute narrated story about farmed animals. It's raw, emotional, and impossible to forget. By the end, Kai is shaken but deeply inspired. He sees a screen which reads, "Let's talk about it. We know that was a difficult watch. Have a short chat with one of our volunteer counsellors and be entered into a $200 prize draw." Jen, a passionate activist, gets a notification on her phone saying that somebody has requested a live chat. She accepts the request and enters the live chat.
Hey. Hey, I just watched that video. That was really hard to see. I had no idea things were that bad.
Yeah, it can be really difficult to watch. How did it make you feel to see what the animals go through?
Yeah, like terrible. That's just thinking about what those animals go through. It's kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is heartbreaking. Do you think there's anything we can do as individuals to help?
Yeah, I guess we can stop paying for animal products, but I just don't know if I can do that. I'm like really into jiu-jitsu and sports performance, and I've always been told this thing that you need meat for protein.
Yeah, I totally get that. A lot of athletes worry about that at first, but the truth is that you can get all the protein you need from plants. Have you
And to some extent, again, there's tension between these two things, and inclusion relies on exclusion. Priorities, and I always think that, like, as an animal movement, we are so small, and we shouldn't be afraid of, without throwing anybody under the bus, we shouldn't be afraid of prioritizing animals. We can use different messaging, different values, different arguments. I'm not going to go over all of them here, but for instance, like
in schools and universities.
I mean, yeah, I don't think the 3.5% rule.
In the church, everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the more education and more outreach, the better for the vegan movement. I don't think the 3.5% rule is applicable in this instance, just because the targets are different than the study from Erica Chenoweth. But the idea of a tipping point is quite interesting. I haven't seen any sufficient data about what that would be. Maybe I would say it's probably a lot larger than 3.5%. Yeah.
I just had a tiny restaurant. Something intersectional. So anyway. Oh, nice. Interesting. Okay, that is probably a bit too sweet, actually.
Maybe at one point to kind of flat out climate denialism. As we all know in this room, that the animal industry is so ingrained with kind of the climate crisis, the acceleration of the climate crisis, and as well as these kind of political and economic figures, maybe more stereotypical figures of the manosphere, have also ingrained their hypermasculinities, the civic focus on kind of meat and endorsing of carnivore diets. Right, so Joe Rogan has talked about how he's going on a carnivore diet, has done this sort of sporadically over the last few years, and Andrew Tate with this really, steaks, eggs, broccoli, onions, garlic, cheese. Next time you go to eat anything, ask yourself why you're not eating a plate of these things instead. It tastes better, and you'll stop having a little dip.
It became very clear that no way I was going to be able to get Dave across the golf course in time to make a safe getaway. Reluctantly, I had to make the heartbreaking decision to turn around, to lead Dave back through the hole, back to his fate. And in doing so, I was able to pick up a much smaller, more compliant goat and run with her as fast as I could back to the waiting van, slap the van on the back and watch it go off into the night, the road to freedom. And my friends and I, we jogged back towards our getaway car, a bittersweet feeling that we'd had to abandon halfway through. And suddenly our radio burst into light that we had another problem. The police were directly behind the van. They were following it on every turn it made. When the van turned left, the police car turned left. If the van turned right, so did the police car. As a result, an open letter to the RSPCA was signed by 250 notable individuals and organisations from every single corner of our movement with one shared demand that the RSPCA disassociate from the assured scheme. We saw organisations sitting down and deciding when the best time might be to release their next investigation. We saw people sitting down to decide when, strategically, amongst those investigations, might be the best time for senior RSPCA officials to resign their positions. And amongst this collaboration of so many organisations with this one shared vision, just like the vision Rose was discussing earlier, we saw success after success as the RSPCA removed all meat recipes from their website. So let's talk about fur farming, banned in 2001 in the UK. And why was it banned? It was banned once again because of a collaboration. Perhaps one of the most unlikely, certainly unplanned collaborations in the history of our movement. But throughout the 1990s, mink farms, fur farms across the UK were getting raided by the Animal Liberation Front to such an extent that the fur farmers bit the hand off the government when they offered them a deal that was proposed by Compassion in World Farming and other welfare organisations.
Thank you so much. We did have one or two no-shows, so they've really been put the hours in. Thank you. And if you said you follow... Always been well.
Spicy.
Okay? How is it?
Spicy.
Spicy.
Oh. Yeah, we could do Europe, right? I'll do the conference. That's it.